Hi everybody, hi everyone on the Fortis Therapy and Training Facebook page. Welcome to the self-care sessions on a Thursday evening, which we'll be doing throughout January, February and March. We've got some amazing people coming to speak to us, one of which is with us tonight. So please feel free to make comments, ask questions, reflections, anything really that, that you want to say. Joe's here to be able to ask us questions and let us know what's happening in the group as well. So as we're talking, so that's kind of where we're all at. I'm Alexis. I'm the Managing Director of Fortis Therapy and Training. I'm a psychotherapist and coach and supervisor and mediator and all sorts of things, really, anything to do with people. And we wanted to bring these sessions to help people really at this time of year. And it feels like it's timed quite well this week, especially with the lockdown, and we hope everyone's doing okay. And if you're not, then get in touch and let us know, because we can maybe help and just support you. So I'm joined tonight by Aimee Horton. So I'm really pleased that Aimee's here. She's come to talk to us tonight about self-care and her journey. Aimee is a writer and author from Lincoln, and works in communications for charities as well, and also is a mum of two, long-suffering maybe mum of two, and I'm a long-suffering mum of three, so I know I know that feeling. And Aimee's come to talk to us tonight about her experiences and how she's kind of put self-care in place to help herself. So you've had a few tricky years, I think is fair to say, Aimee, is that right?
Yes, I've always been quite stiff upper lipped and power on through, but when my mum got diagnosed with cancer and we moved and she died and we had an extension, everything all combined, I carried on going and did spent a lot of time sounding like Ross in Friends, saying I'm fine, and I convinced myself I was fine, until one day I realized I wasn't, and I needed to start putting myself first for a change. And that sounds very simple, and it also sounds like probably what most mums feel like, but it was definitely an exhausting few years. And I must admit, I assumed after my mum passed away that I would get back to normal quickly, because the stress that comes with having an ill relative and having to deal with all that side of things had been put to one side. So whilst I was grieving, there was obviously a sense of relief that that part of my day-to-day life was no longer there, but I hadn't taken into account the fact that the adrenaline goes, and it hit me quite hard, and I was exhausted, and it took me a long time to accept that, really.
I think it's almost like you said there, but I'm fine. I'm sure loads of people can relate to that, because I know we've all done that at certain times in our lives, where you just kind of think, I've got to be fine, because there's something about having to be, because you've got a lot to manage and you're looking after your mum, and you're in that set of circumstances. But when those set of circumstances are no longer there and they're not your daily kind of routine, suddenly you're left with quite a lot of time as well, aren't you? And the adrenaline drops, but you've also got a lot of time to think and to kind of process what's happened.
Yeah, it hits you, and you're a lot tireder. I also think I had a very unhealthy mentality of someone is always worse off than you. And I think sometimes that can help, that, there's always a silver lining, think of the positives, but sometimes you have to sit and think, this is rubbish. Actually, this is horrible. This is rubbish. And I'm okay to feel fat and rubbish. I'm okay to sit and wallow for a little bit, and it's normal to be sad. And yes, that person who you're friends with is suffering, but that doesn't devalue your suffering. And I think that's something I've learned a lot in the last sort of 6 to 9 months, that I devalued my suffering, and I needed a counsellor in the end to validate my feelings, which it sounds so silly that I needed a stranger when I have such supportive friends and family. And I think that's something that people probably don't realise, that their friends and family are there and they're supporting them, but sometimes it's nice to have someone who doesn't know you, who you don't think is just being kind.
And I think with that as well, that you can say whatever is in your head, because I think that's the other thing, that when you're in the relationships with people who you care about and who care about you, you might hold back on things or not say exactly what you're thinking, or maybe say things too harshly, because how you're feeling, but to actually say it to somebody who you're not connected to in that way gives you a sense of free. I mean, for me, I've been a client before, and it gives me a sense of freedom of, you know, being able to say whatever I'm thinking, really.
And not become a burden. These people that when you speak to someone who you've been allocated this hour to talk about yourself, it initially feels quite indulgent, but actually they're there for you to unburden yourself, because I am very aware, like I said, it's a trait that I care a lot about my friends and my family and other people, and I don't want to add additional burden to them. So it's definitely, although in a way, considering I like it when my friends unburden to me, I should take on board that. But I think that's something that we're naturally built up to do, is to think of others first.
I think we can maybe almost talk ourselves out of talking to other people, you know, because like you say, you know, you don't want to be a burden, you don't want them to worry about you. And I think as well, sometimes that you can't then leave it there. Sometimes I think friends and family, because they're worried and concerned, will keep checking in and keep asking you how you're doing, and you might be in a different place a few hours later or the next day or a few weeks later and not really want to keep going back to that. So there's something about having a separate space which feels for you, just for you.
And you're prepared to do it as well. You're prepared for that emotion. So if you're still at the stage where you're guarding your emotions and your feelings a little bit, if you're prepared to deal with them in that space of time, you're a little bit more. I'm a little bit of a control freak with my feelings, and like I said, I think that probably is why I had the whole stiff upper lip thing going on. But I think if you're prepared that hour or however long it is just to focus on you, it can be quite helpful, and it can be, like you say, it's quite freeing.
Absolutely. And quite emotionally draining, I think, because you're going to places that you've probably actively avoided for quite a long time because if you don't think about them, you don't get upset, then you don't have to deal with them. But to actually take the plunge, I think it's a really courageous thing to do. We, you know, work with a lot of clients, and it's incredibly courageous to pick up the phone in the first place, never mind to actually walk in the door.
Yeah, it's a big deal, and I think it's a shame that it's still. I know for myself, it goes back to, I didn't think I deserved to feel like that, not because I thought I was too worthy, but I felt like other people deserved to feel like that more. And so to actually recognize it's a shame. I think it's really important for people. I will continually bang on about validating your own feelings, because I think it's so important for people not to compare. We're in a real culture of comparison, whether it's how we parent our children to how we buy our lipstick or wear our leopard print or whatever. We compare ourselves daily, and it's quite dangerous when it gets down to comparing how you feel or how you feel you should feel.
Yeah, and that word should, because it's very powerful, isn't it? That I should or I shouldn't be feeling this way. And where those messages come from, I think, because you know, you talked about one of your messages around, you know, there's people worse off than me. And it kind of just trips off the tongue, because it's something that quite a lot of people grow up with, that message, and others as well. But it can get in the way, can't it, of actually acknowledging and, as you said, validating actually you and your experience and how you feel about things.
Definitely, and it probably falls into why self-care can be so difficult for people, because there's the people are worse off than you, but there's also, I have people to put before me. I have 2 children that I put before me. I have a husband that I put before me, and he doesn't mind that I do self-care. You know, he wouldn't say, no, don't go up, get a bath, I want you to clear up the pots. He probably actively says, why don't you just go for a run or go for a bath, if he can see that I need to. But my natural need to be responsible is to say, no, I'm going to do all these things first. And that's when self-care falls out of the picture a little bit.
Do you think there's almost a bit of a bargaining thing going on there? Like, I've got to have done my responsibilities first, or I've got to do my jobs first, you know, that kind of idea, that then I can give myself permission to take time out.
Definitely. And I think because self-care has been quite commercialized over the last few years. I mean, I've seen it the last few days. There's been a lot of, you know, buy this to help you run faster for your self-care. You know, best self-care tips for 2021. Buy this lettuce or do this. Self-care has been made into something that's selfish and self-indulgent. And well, it's been split. It's either selfish and self-indulgent, or they're mistaking self-maintenance. So for me, having a shower, I mean, I appreciate everyone is different, and I do think when I say this is my personal experiences. To me, having a shower and having my lunch isn't self-care. I was talking to a friend about it, and she used the phrase self-maintenance, which I've promptly stolen.
Don't give her any credit for that, just carry on.
Thank you. But I promptly stole it because it's true. It's just self-maintenance. And I think there's certain people who are programmed to think of it as self-care, and I don't know if it's because of the commercial side of things. You know, we were talking about self-care being considered as self-indulgent and selfish, and we talked about the flake advert and how she must be really selfish to be in that bath with her flake, with her water. She's doing all that. That's what we all aspire to be, when really having a bath and reading your book isn't anything to feel guilty about. It's not a massive indulgent. You know, I did this the other night. I got up after dinner and I said, right, I'm going for a bath. And my husband went, okay. And I sort of went on and I was like, oh, I'm really proud of myself. I went and had a bath. And my friend said, why? And I said, well, because normally I think that I need to supervise clearing up and, you know,
make sure it's done properly.
Yes, because not everyone is as clean as me.
Actually, a question around this area, Aimee. One of the ladies watching has said, how do you find the balance and cope with children while taking time for yourself, especially in the current climate?
It's taken a lot of work. It's taken a lot of work and a lot of a change of mindset. But I feel I'm quite lucky the boys are older now. So I can just say to them, right, mum needs 10 minutes, just go away. And they're quite good at it. Or now if the bedroom door's shut, they know they can't come in. And if the bathroom doors, you know, I mean, admittedly, when I had my bath, I did have to shout out of the door, I can hear you, and will you stop that banging?
See, that's the reality of it, isn't it, as a mum?
But I think it's very easy to let it fall down the list of priorities. But I think I was talking about this to you earlier, Alex, where I said that I spend my life telling my children to fuel themselves, whether it's correctly for their bodies to do sport or their brains to do schoolwork or just generally to sleep. You know, I tell them constantly, and I don't know when it changed, where I stopped fueling myself. And it took me a long time to realize that, you know, I talk about I'm a better mum when my kids have been to stay with my in-laws. There's no doubt about it. 24 hours of someone not talking to me. I mean, my husband could go as well, and that would be brilliant.
Need to work on that.
And you have, as I can't send them away at the moment, I have to find my own moments, even if it is just like, go and play on your Xbox. I'm going to go and sit in the lounge and watch some EastEnders, or I'm going to go and read my book with a glass of wine.
I think that's a really good point, because I think sometimes we feel guilty because we're actually trying to carve out some time for ourselves, but actually you're modeling for your children that you need time out. You can't be in those roles all the time. You need to be able to put them down sometimes. And when my children are older now, they're all, you know, 11, I've got 11, 14 and 16. So they do understand when I need to kind of say, look, just everyone step away, because that, you know, I need a bit of breathing space. But I could, you know, when they were younger, I would say to them, you know, go and watch, let's put this DVD on, or let's, you know, you watch that and I'm going to go and do this. Because the whole thing around parenting is, oh no, they shouldn't be watching telly, they shouldn't be on the screens, and that's absolutely fine. They shouldn't be on them all the time, absolutely not. But actually, for you to take some time out, if that's what you need to do at the minute, then that's what you need to do at the minute.
Definitely, and especially in the current climate, it you know, again, mine are old enough for me to say, right, no, you are not having screens at this time. You are doing your schoolwork. You will go and play in the garden, and I will lock the door if I have to. You know, you are going to play outside because you need fresh air, or you are going to read a book because you need some non-screen time. And if you're on it too long, it makes you snappy. But they're on their screens more than they usually are because, well, firstly, what else is there to do? And secondly, like you say, you need to create some boundaries for yourself. And I found that all along, you know, I don't know about when your kids were little, but there's this queuing system where if we had a swear jar version of mum, I would be loaded. And they even, you know, if I'm sitting at my desk working and they want to go on their screens, they'll come and queue. They will come and queue at my desk. Even when I say, right, I'm busy, then they'll just go as far as the door, and I can hear them breathing outside the door. So we now have boundaries of, right, if you come and queue, then you lose half an hour. But yeah, I've got friends with younger kids who say, oh, but they watched Peppa Pig for an hour today. And I'm like, so if you need that to go and have a breather, you know, I used to go and lock myself in the toilet when mine were little and just take 5 minutes to breathe, or, you know, let them watch Peppa Pig and cuddle up to them and close your eyes, or read your book. It's so important. And we like you say, we are led in this current society, we're told to have Pinterest play areas set out for them when they come home from school, and to engage them with sensory things. And actually, do you know what, let them watch In the Night Garden or whatever trash on YouTube that does your head in. It's because we do it, we watch trash, we scroll on our phones. I am guilty of falling into a Mumsnet thread, you know, not so much now because there's no parking threads, but a real thread on Mumsnet, and getting lost in mindless drivel just to have a bit of downtime. So I don't see why they can't either, and it's not bad.
No, and it's that distraction. It distracts your head, doesn't it, from what's going on? They do it too. We do it as well, and we need that space. I think. Do you think that there's, you know, you're thinking about all the things that you've experienced over the those years recently, and kind of putting one foot in front of the other and trying to kind of keep being fine. When you kind of got to the point of realizing that you weren't fine and that you actually needed to go and do something for yourself, what do you think was the biggest challenge to being able to access support? Sorry, Jo, have you got a question as well?
It just ties into it really. Just on top of that, someone's asking, how serious does it have to be before I access therapy? Like, what was the turning point for you? Which I think ties in quite nicely with what Alexis is talking about.
For me, the turning point was realizing I couldn't do my job anymore. As a writer, you have to feel and let yourself go and let yourself think. And I've got to the stage where I couldn't drive in the car without songs that I didn't know the words to, or I couldn't have a shower without listening to a podcast, because I felt if I didn't think, I could soldier on. And then when I was going through my work and I realised, well, I had a very awkward conversation about my work, and I realised that I was damaging something that I have my dream job. I love both my jobs so much, and I was at risk of damaging it. So I was functioning fine. I was taking my children to football. Yes, I might have sat in the car so I didn't have to speak to anyone, or I might have convinced my husband to do the supermarket instead of me, but I was taking them to school, I was going to football, I was sitting at my desk and working, and I was working probably too hard. In fact, I think I was proving I was fine by proving how busy I was, which is another dangerous thing in society at the moment. Being busy is credible. Taking time out for yourself, again, it goes back to being selfish, which is not at all. So in my opinion, I think if you don't feel fine, that's enough.
Yeah.
And you're a professional.
Well, no, I mean, I think you're right. I wrote down quite a few things as you were talking there, because one of the things I think can happen for people is that, like you say, you are functioning, but you're not, so you're surviving, and you're doing, and that becomes more the minimum, you know, that's kind of starts to reduce what you actually can engage with, what you've got the capacity for. And I think when you get to the point where actually I can't do this anymore, and everyone has a different point with that. Some people have to get to the really lowest ebb before they'll actually ever ask for help. And in my opinion, the strongest people come and ask for help because they get to a point where they think, actually, I know I can't do this on my own anymore. And it is that courageous step. But I think as well, physically, your body can tell you as well. You might be feeling anxious, or you might start to feel unwell, or you might be getting ill all the time. Your sleep patterns are affected. So you might not be sleeping that well, or engaging with other people that brilliantly. So there's these indicators that almost will be individual to each person, but will really give a sense of what needing to access help and support when they get to almost too far down the line to manage it on your own, I think.
Definitely. I think recognizing things is really, really important, instead of excusing them. I'm not sleeping because, it's noisy outside. Really, you're not, or because my hormones. No, I'm not sleeping because I'm anxious, or my head's hurting, not because I have a headache, but because I'm probably bordering a panic attack, or I'm absolutely exhausted because of X, Y, and Z, you know, the kids are doing my head in. No, actually, you're exhausted because you're unwell.
Absolutely.
I'm very lucky now that I've become really self-aware. I think I'm in this very nice, fluffy counselling bubble at the moment where I'm able to be self-aware, and I can step aside and think, right, okay, I need to do something. I think a good example was Monday. I was really, really twitchy on Monday. I knew Boris was going to close the schools. I just had this feeling, but I was still getting them ready to go to school, or one of them ready to go to school, and I was getting all ready, but I knew his announcement was probably going to be that, and I physically was buzzing. So we had family dinner, and I went and straight away got a shower, because I just needed to let off a little bit of, proper hot shower, wash my hair, dry my hair, take a bit of control of myself again, ready. And then I felt fine, because I felt it. I felt my head start to hurt, and I hadn't realised, I think one of the symptoms that I didn't even know was a thing was I always said my head felt like a magic 8-ball, that someone had really shook it, and my brain was wobbling around in it. And that was happening like daily, just all the time.
Because becomes your norm.
And now when I feel it, it starts in the back of my neck, and I can think, right, okay, go and do something, whether it is just step away from the computer, if it's something to do with, if I get stressed with work, step away from the computer and go and make a cup of tea, or, just take a few minutes. But it does take time to recognize the signs, I think.
But also that bit about taking some time, in all of those examples you just given, you are taking control, aren't you? You're taking control of whatever you can, however small that might be, having a shower, taking yourself away from the situation, but getting some control back in, because you can't control what Boris is going to do. No one seems to be able to do that. But you can control the small steps that you take to help you to feel better. And I think just that those examples of going for a hot shower and taking some time out and removing yourself as well, and just, I think, breathing as well, actually, let me just breathe a minute and just connect with where I'm at, because those physical symptoms you just described there, I think people can live with those for an awful long time without recognizing what they really mean.
Yeah, I think so, definitely. I just thought I was being silly. Definitely.
I think loads of people can relate to that. And I think the idea about busyness as well. I was listening to a podcast, which I cannot remember the name of for the life of me, but there was a really good question in it about what is all this external busyness hiding and distracting from on an internal basis. So why are we physically filling time and being very busy all the time when what's going on internally for us as individuals, but also as a society, that we value that more than we value taking time for well-being or self-care?
I think we live in a world of social media, which I think can be absolutely incredible. I have a soft spot for social media. I think I've got a brilliant community on my social media where people really genuinely care about each other, but it's also an awful lot of comparison. And I think there's an element of proving how busy you are proves your self-worth. And there is an element of, I know I had it in the school playground a couple of times, a lot of, well, it's all right for you with your job at home. And instantly I was like, well, I have to prove that I work hard. I've got to prove my worth. So I'm going to make sure everyone knows how hard I'm working. When really, do you know what? Yeah, some days writing is just sitting in the garden and reading someone else's book to look at their writing, or it is just doing some baking or pottering so that your brain can work and think. And I was ashamed of that, because I think we're, as a society and as social media, we're saying, no, you've got to go for it. And I don't know if it's a generational thing, where women have to have it all and prove that they're really busy but can manage the mental load as well. But we should really be being told how to let the mental load go. I was forced to. I was very controlling. I was in charge of football and everything, because I have a job that I love, but I'm very aware that my husband has a job which allows me to do my job in the hours that I want to do. So when Mum got sick, he had to take them to football. He had to do the homework, and he was so supportive, but I really struggled with letting go. So I think, I don't know when it became a thing, whether I was brought up to the woman do it all or what, but I think it's really important these days for people to understand you can share the mental load. Your partner is not going to combust. And I don't want to pitch it into a man versus woman thing, because I think there are men who are in a similar thing. I think it's just who your personality can be sometimes. If you feel responsible for everything, you feel responsible, and letting that go is really difficult, but I think it's really important.
I think the parameters for your relationship it's so individual, isn't it, for people in their relationships, about what those parameters are and what's acceptable and what isn't. And I think that has a huge impact on being able to let go, or how you feel about letting go, and whether or not you're not good enough if you let go, because it's very loaded.
I felt selfish and lazy, and like I was just clearly not good enough, when really we're in a partnership. We've been together for 20 years. We're a partnership. So really, he didn't mind. So why was I having such a problem doing it?
Yeah, you're minding on his behalf.
Yeah, definitely.
We've got a lady asking, obviously, I know you guys were just talking about how a lot of things in relationships are individual, and the same will apply to this. But in your experience, what are some effective daily rituals for self-care beyond having a bath or going for a run?
Oh, that's a good one. I think the most important one is, I keep saying it, validating your own feelings. Tell yourself you're allowed to feel how you feel. Tell yourself that your feelings matter. And then I think you have to pick your own self-care. I find exercise, now I don't associate exercise with trying to make myself thin and making myself look a certain way. Exercise to me is a really important part of making myself feel better. Whether it's going for a run or doing some yoga, I'm sensible enough now, because I've learned it, to think, right, okay, I just need to do a 15-minute hit and that will help. But at the same time, that doesn't always help, and you have to listen to your body a little bit. So if you're feeling a bit broken, if you're feeling tired and broken, self-care could just be as much as wrapping yourself up in a blanket and having a snooze. Or I can't tell, and I don't think it's fair for me to make suggestions of what people do as their own self-care. I think you have to do something that makes you feel happy and makes you feel, so that when you stand up, your shoulders feel better and your head doesn't hurt anymore. And I think I have friends that say, you're mad. Why does going for a run make you feel better? You're crazy. Whereas, but I also think actually it's really important that you do something for you. And I got asked once, well, what have you done for yourself? I said, oh, I baked a cake. And they said, oh, what cake did you bake? And I said, oh, I baked a chocolate one, because that's Larry's favourite cake. And they said, so you didn't do it for you. You did it for your son. So I think you have to find what makes you feel happy and allow yourself to have that. And again, it's allowing yourself to have it. And hopefully if you've got a partner or you're living with people, that they want the best for you. So, and maybe tell them, my husband knows that going for a run or going and using the battle ropes or doing a Joe Wicks and not talking to me makes me feel better. But because I had to tell him, your partner's not a mind reader.
No, and I think that's really important, actually. I was just thinking as you were saying that as a police officer that I did some work with recently, and we were talking about what he needed, and he's got a really stressful job, and he was going home and feeling really agitated with family, because he hadn't actually transitioned from what he was doing in the day job to actually being at home. And we talked about it, and he went home and said, when I get home, I just need 15-20 minutes just to go and lay on the bed or listen to a podcast or read a bit of a book. I just need to be away from everybody, because I just need to land, and then I can be what I am here. And I think it's giving ourselves permissions, but also it's really important to communicate that to other people and offer it to them as well. So if you're in a household with other people, that you're recognizing that each person needs to have their choices, their options around their own self-care. And you talked there about putting those things in place and listening to what you need. And I think it's tracking, isn't it? It's tracking what's bothering me, what am I triggered by, am I triggered, am I just tired, what's going on, and what's going to help me, not what's going to burn me out, what's going to make me more tired, because the question there, Joanne, had the word ritual in it, and I think rituals can become almost like suffocating. It feels like you've got to do it, otherwise you feel guilty because you haven't done it. It's more about habits and just kind of being a bit more allowing to yourself, I guess.
and a bit more vocal. I think I resented wholeheartedly my husband's hour-long commute every day when he was working away and the children were little, because he had an hour in his car. I don't think he realised he'd get home and I'd be a bit like, oh, they've been crying, or he's been in a tantrum, or he's learned how to unlock the toilet door and now I can't even go for a wee in peace. And I don't think he appreciated it as either, because since lockdown, obviously, he's been at home all the time, and he now comes down the stairs into the explosion, which is our household, of me going, have you done your homework? Have you got your football kit? Have you had your dinner? And he said, I really miss my commute. And so it was quite nice, because I don't think he'd realise that was, again, you probably don't sometimes realise what your self-care is, but the fact that I said, now do you understand why I was so resentful? And he was like, yes I do. And now he goes out for a walk, you know, he comes downstairs and he goes out for a walk, whether it's 5 minutes around the block or however long he wants to take. But I don't feel resentful, because before it was because I'd have no time, because I would never allow myself any time. And I think that's the key. I never allowed myself, and I was an inadvertent martyr probably. But now I'm like today, I said to the boys, right, nobody talk to me for half an hour. I'm going to just do this. And again, I'm privileged enough that they're at the age that I can do that. But if they're not, then you definitely are at the age of, right, if you have your time, then I need my time. And there's no shame in saying that, I don't think.
Absolutely. I think shame does come. There is a potential to have shame with self-care, because we're not really conditioned. I was talking to someone the other day. This wasn't in a therapeutic conversation, and they just said, I have a right to take time out for myself. And I was like, yeah, totally. That's exactly what it is. It's having a right to do that. That where we can negate that, or we can avoid that, you know, feeling of needing a bit of time out and pretend that we don't need it and that we're fine and we can carry on and everything else. But eventually it all builds up, and that's when you end up struggling, because it's like you've packed it away. And, you know, often when clients are talking about things, they'll talk about boxes, you know, or they've tucked it away in the filing cabinet, or there's something where it's all back there somewhere, and eventually it just comes spilling out in different ways, whether it's behavior or mental health or emotions or, you know, panic, whatever.
And I think it's very easy to say, we all know what to do. It's a bit like healthy eating, isn't it? We all know you need to eat more food, exercise, more green food, exercise more, drink less alcohol, eat less beige. But it's so hard to break a habit. And
you're my kind of nutritionist, Aimee.
Basically melted cheese all the way. Yeah. But unfortunately, it's not healthy for my body to have melted cheese 3 times a day, which I think is really unfair. But it's true. We know what we're meant to do. We're all sent, you know, we all know really that we should take time for ourselves. But I firmly believe we've been conditioned that we shouldn't. And I think it's a habit and an opinion that we should definitely change.
Do you think that, because obviously, you know, you've done quite a lot of work on yourself and thought and reflected on, you know, all the things that you were kind of thinking before that maybe weren't helping you, and you're working on changing that and putting things in place. Because how do you kind of make sure, I suppose, that you are consistent with that? Because it's hard, isn't it, to keep yourself in mind when you're not used to keeping yourself in mind.
It's really hard. I find lists are amazing. I've got I call it the Book of Wonder, and basically it's got tasks for the day. So I've got a rolling list of everything I need to do, but then I have tasks that I'm going to do that day. But it's got an hourly timetable. So straight away I put in things in normal climate of school run, and, you know, football for the kids and this, that, and the other. I put them in, and then I put in first something for me, whether it's workout or, you know, go for a walk with my friend, or, you know, just go and sit and watch EastEnders with a cup of tea, and not write a list while I'm doing it, or not meal plan while I'm doing it, or not. Basically, I'm very, very good at watching TV whilst I'm doing something, whether it's emptying the dishwasher, planning, you know, booking the kids' lunches at school, going through their school letters. No, that half hour or an hour is for me. And then I work my tasks for the day around it. And that's very easy for me because I work from home and I can be flexible. But that works both ways, because there was times when I was in danger of working more hours because I'd work before the kids went to school, I'd work when I got back, then I'd pick them up and I'd race them around all over the place, and then I'd come back and work while I'm cooking dinner. You know, I was often seen having my laptop next to the oven, and now I'm like, right, these are the times, this is the time I stop working, and this is the time that, yes, I have to run up and down the bypass for football, but when I come back, I'm going to sit and have a glass of wine in front of the fire just to recharge briefly. And if it's in there, because I'm very big at ticking things off, sense of achievement is to me almost an element of self-care.
Yeah.
That to me is probably the best way of doing it, because then it's there. Every morning you have your list and it's in your to-do list.
And you've set your intentions that you're going to actually include it as well, haven't you? Because I think that's important.
Rather than sit there and think, oh, I should do something for myself. Oh, maybe I should work out today. When am I going to work out? And I've got, oh no, actually at 11 o'clock, I've put this space for me to do some exercise or for me to go for a walk.
And I think that experience of you working from home at the minute, for people who aren't used to working from home or have been forced to really over the last, nearly a year now. I know when I've never really worked from home. I've had a desk at home that I would probably sit at, I don't know, probably 6 hours a month if in total before lockdown, the first lockdown. And now I'm here, and this is, I'm out and about doing some things, but I'm at my desk a lot of the time. And my husband's worked from home for years, and he said to me within about the first 3 weeks, you won't be able to keep that up. The pace that you're doing that, the amount of hours you're sitting there, the fact that you're not taking a break, because it was full on, and we were trying to get Fortis to work in a different way and everything else. But it was actually he could see realistically and rationally what was more sensible, and I couldn't see that because I was in it.
Yeah.
So I think when you're working from home, hearing how you kind of book that in and plan it and make sure that that's as important as your working day, or as important as taking the boys to football or whatever it might be. It's just equally planned as much as everything else is, because I don't think many people do that.
Definitely, because if you think about it, in an office, you've got time to wander up and down the corridor to get a drink. You have more interaction because you're talking to people. Your lunch hour is either surrounded by people at your desk, which I know when I worked in the office, I used to eat at my desk and people were still there, but you have the opportunity to go out and go for a walk and run errands. And at home, again, I suppose it goes back to the olden days where people assumed working from home was working from home, and actually you were sitting there moving your mouse about. So again, there's probably a lot of people in the current climate trying to prove themselves, but actually you tend to do longer hours and you tend to be less distracted. But also I think it's important, if you go downstairs to make yourself a cup of tea, it's nice to bung a load of washing in, but you wouldn't have done that if you were in the office. So if you want to do that, go for it. If it makes you feel like you've achieved something and that you feel more on top of things, definitely. But if you come downstairs and make a cup of tea, go and stand at the window and look outside, or look at your phone and have a couple of messages with your friends, because otherwise it is literally work from the beginning till the end, and you've got to be really careful not to let that merge into your entire life. Working from home, I'm sure Joe can appreciate this, it can seep easily into just all the time. And you've got to learn to let go. So I think the timetable is so important. I didn't used to. Again, it's just part of me starting to recognize, oh wait, so I've literally, while the kids are getting ready, I'm sitting at the computer, and while the kids are showering, getting ready for bed, I'm sitting at the computer. That's not healthy. So I think you definitely have to do a timetable's a good thing.
Definitely, that's a really good tip, actually, really good tool. Is there any other comments, Joe, or anything else that's coming from the group that you want to?
There's lots of little comments coming in. It's a really nice tip. Eloise has just posted saying, write a list of things you love doing and put them in a jar, and when you're feeling in need of self-care and something to do but feeling uninspired, pick something out of the jar and do what you're told.
I do that for the kids in their school holidays, when it's a boredom jar, when they're not allowed on their screens and they have no brain power to do anything else. They have to pull something else. That's a brilliant tip. I'm going to do that.
That's a really good one. Any others?
Just reading
through. The other thing I was just going to say with that, just thinking about you being a writer, and we were talking about kind of things that people can do. I think creativity is a really important one, because we see it therapeutically that creativity is great for expression, and often what you can't say in words you can express creatively. But there's also something about having that maybe as part of your self-care. You know, people will say, oh, I'm terrible at drawing, and it's not about that. It's about whether it's about cooking or, you know, poetry or, you know, a whole gamut of things. I mean, you both write, so that's your, you know, you're really good at that expression, but might not be for everyone. But there's other creative ways, isn't there, of doing that?
Definitely. And also, like you say, it's funny, I actually asked my in-laws for some paints and an easel, because I used to do art at school for Christmas, and I got it because it goes back to what I said about not being able to sit in front, do something without doing something for someone else, whereas with drawing you can't do anything else. So I'm awful, considering I wanted to do A-level art and do design. I am awful. I tried to follow a YouTube on how to paint a cloud, and it's sitting there looking sadly at me. I'm quite embarrassed, but it was good because it's different and it focuses your mind on something. I think if you can find something, whether it's whatever it is that takes your mind away from day-to-day stuff and you're focusing completely on that, I think that's a really positive thing, definitely.
Yeah, just going back to what we were saying about lists, Amy's commented saying she was speaking to a gentleman recently. He said he writes a list of work goals, home goals and personal goals, and he ticks them off, and it physically lets him see if everything is in balance.
That's good.
That's a really good way. You talked before, Aimee, when we were talking yesterday, about you had kind of 3 areas that you talked about life admin, didn't you? What was the 3 sections that you had for that?
There was essential life admin, such as paying bills and getting your kids to school and eating, and then there was the sort of
surviving, more
responsibilities, you know, organising play dates or cooking nutritious meals, and then there was the sort of, I can't remember the exact wording of it now. Basically, there's something for yourself that's a personal treat, and then there's the 2 essential. And I learned very early on that I did very little things for myself. It goes back to what I was saying about the cake. I put the cake in my personal reward sort of thing, but actually it wasn't, because I wasn't doing it for me. So yeah, there's essential things you have to do, then there's stuff that you feel you have to do or do need doing, but it's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world if you forget to pay football subs straight away, or it's not the end of the world if your kids are wearing odd socks to school, or
thank God.
I don't think my kids have ever worn matching socks, to be honest.
Me either.
But you know, it's not the end of the world. And I learned that, again, I used to build up, well, it is the end of the world, but I slowly learned that you've got these 3 areas for a reason. There is always something essential that needs doing. Unfortunately, that's life. But you need to level it out. If you've got 20 things in your essential things and 20 things in your, you know, it's responsible, but in your desirable for you things, you've got nothing. That's a really uneven balance.
There's something about visually seeing that as well, isn't there, that you've actually got that in front of you.
It was a real shock when I did that. When I started to fill in, right, this is what I've been doing today. But I think one day before school, I'd already done 20 essential things. And that's when I felt myself feeling overwhelmed and tired and worried about for the rest of the day. And so I stuck a walk in after the school run, and it just grounded me a little bit, because I felt, I suppose a lot of parents can relate of, well, I do everything for you and I do all this, and you don't say it, but sometimes you sit there and think, selfish little sods, you know.
I had this conversation yesterday about the dishwasher.
Exactly. Every now and then I say, you know, I'll say, can you put that in the dishwasher for me? And they'll say, oh no, that's not my plate. And I'm like, oh, okay then, well, I'll only wash my clothes for me, and I'll only drive the car to take me somewhere that I want to go. You better get walking if you're going to get to school on time. And you think it, but you can see why you think it. If you recognise that actually, yes, you are doing a lot of things and none of it's for you, and you can kid yourself that it's for you. Well, if we do that, then I feel better.
Yeah.
But again, it goes back to the not the end of the world things.
And there's always going to be things on the essential list. You know, there's always, you know, especially the older you get, the more responsibilities you have, potentially, the more there's going to be on that list. And I think it is very much about, actually, is that a need to do today, or can that wait till next week? Is it something that's, and I know I've had to learn that over the years, that doesn't all need to be ticked off today. If I get 5 things ticked off, that's great.
Yeah.
those other things. The sky's not going to fall down if I don't get it all done. And
you're
it's
not dropping the ball
yeah,
if you don't do something.
yeah, absolutely.
You're not responsible for everyone else's responsibilities.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's been really good to talk to you, and thank you for taking the time out to come and speak to us this evening. And some really good tips there. I'm hoping that people who've been listening and people who'll be watching, catching up, will be able to take some things away from that and just really think about their relationship with self-care, and being able to give themselves permission to take that time to be able to put that into their timetable or however they manage it. I think there's some really good helpful tips that practical that I think will be really useful. Yeah, thank you. Just before we finish though, what would you say your top 3 are?
It goes back to my first one, validating your own feelings. Again, okay. I think that is, until you do that, I don't think you can properly look after yourself. Mm-hmm. Second one is to remember self-care isn't selfish. Self-care and a shower and lunch and maintenance. That is not a reward at all. And self-care isn't even a reward. It's for you. And the third one is pick what works for you. And also don't assume that the same item of self-care works every day. So one day you might want to just curl up under a blanket and have a cup of tea or eat some melted cheese. But the other day you might want to go and see someone and speak to them. So listen to your body and your mind and pick what works for you. Don't make it into a chore because you think that's what you need to do.
Yeah, absolutely. They're brilliant tips. Thanks ever so much for spending the time to come and talk to me, and thanks to Jo as well for fielding the.
Thanks. Loved it.
We're going to be doing these talks every Thursday night at 7:30, as I said at the beginning. So next week we've got a lady called Katie Buffy who's coming to talk to us. She has the eco jewellery brand called Salt and Silver. She's from Cleethorpes, so she's a local lady to where most of us are in Lincolnshire. Katie has Asperger's, ADHD and Tourette's, which can lead to anxiety. So she has some really great tools that she feels will be useful to share with everybody. So really looking forward to talking to her as well. So in the meantime, everyone have a really good rest of the weekend, and we'll see you next Thursday. And thanks to Aimee for joining us tonight.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.